Fellas, let's dive right in. Our first topic of the day, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series coming to Disney Plus. So Ewan McGregor was interviewed recently, and he made a very interesting comment in regards to this new series. And basically what he said was that this series, this Kenobi series, is going to feel quote unquote more real than the prequels. So Dre, I mean, I know you're a massive Star Wars guy. What are your feelings on these comments? What Ewan McGregor was saying about how the vibe of this show is going to feel a lot more real than it did in the prequels.
I think later on he goes on to say stuff like, he wasn't really a big fan of George's direction, maybe, in writing, saying it's like, well, had a hard time because it wasn't Shakespeare kind of thing. And I think, look, Ian McGregor, I think he is an actual fan of the series, like a lot, but I think he did have problems with how the prequels actually turned out in terms of just their kind of production, because the production of those prequels had so much green screen, so much CGI, and there's this one notable story where he's on he's playing the scene where he's on the planet of Camino, and he's walking down the corridor, and he's looking at the clones down below and so forth. Well, that scene, he is completely by himself in that whole thing. When filming that, it's just blue screen all around him, and he's being yelled at what he's supposed to be looking at, and you have a screen reader on the side there reading the lines, and he has nobody to interact with, nobody to kind of feed off of for his performance there, and he really had a difficult time. He notes that he had a really difficult time with how that all played out just in the production, and I don't think he was quite happy with the reception, which is unfortunate, because I actually think they've kind of risen back up, especially because of the Clone Wars. So I think now, what he's saying that they're more real is you have more, kind of physicality, more things you can actually see and interact with as an actor on screen, and a more realistic take on the on the canon, the lore, than the prequels were.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I've actually always enjoyed the prequels, but I've seen a lot of criticism of like Hayden Christensen over the years. Oh, he's a terrible actor. Oh my gosh, he's cringy. He's this and that. And look, I've always defended Hayden because I feel like he was kind of handed like a giant lemon when it comes to the prequels. I mean, these really distinguished actors and actresses, even Natalie Portman. I mean, a lot of her stuff was awkward in those prequels, and she's an incredible actress. When you're acting in front of a green screen, there's nothing around you, and the dialogue is George Lucas dialogue, and not, like he said, not exactly Shakespeare. It's difficult. I've seen Hayden in other stuff. He's fantastic, and I just think that, he was always I think people were a little hard on him. But George, what are your thoughts on this whole Kenobi series feeling more real, and what Dre touched upon in terms of like the, just Ewan McGregor not really feeling too happy with the prequels, how they turned out, the dialogue. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first off, kind of going off what you said at first with Hayden, speaking on Team Hayden, that a lot of people were saying it was literally like a one-tone, very dry. But I think to that notion, I'm kind of glad Hayden went towards that direction, because it shows the transition from him being as Anakin into Darth Vader. You want to start seeing that kind of like that mysterious type of feel in his dialogue. And I think it was the best approach that Hayden could have gone for, in my opinion. But kind of going what Dre was saying on the Kenobi series, that I don't have a problem with the prequels, but I could definitely see the difference of how you can separate them from the original. And I just think that when you have something so as a cinematic masterpiece like the original Star Wars films, and then you go into prequels and everyone has this sort of this tone of, okay, well, it has to be like this, it has to be like that. And I think for me, when it comes to Hugh McGregor, that, as you were saying, of being in front of a green screen and a blue screen constantly and kind of reacting to nothing there, I think you start to see a lot of his acting being more appreciative when he and Hayden were doing the final battle in Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had that interaction with an actual person, and that, they were training in sword fighting and and combat and everything to get those scenes so realistic. So I think that what we could expect from Kenobi is there's going to be a lot more in-depth one-on-one with actual people, where it's going to bring the Kenobi character more out as Hugh McGregor himself than him just standing there basically talking to himself.
Right. And one thing that I think that the sequel trilogy and the originals kind of excelled compared to the prequels was their use of lightsaber fights. And I know some people might disagree with me on this, but like, I think that like the prequels, they overused the lightsaber fights to the point where it's almost become like you kind of almost like zoned it out. Everyone had a lightsaber and they were all flipping around and doing their saber stuff. But in the original movies and the sequels, it was used much more sparingly. So when there was a lightsaber fight, it carried more weight to it, in terms of the story. So I think we're going to see a little bit of that with this new Kenobi series. I don't think it's obviously not going to be the prequels where everyone has a lightsaber. The situation in the galaxy is different, right, with the Jedi and everything. But I think you're going to see more weight to those lightsaber battles, which I think is very exciting. What are your thoughts on that, Dre, in terms of like the saber fights and like the using it more sparingly? And
well, I think if you heard George Lucas talk about it, he was always saying that, hey, this is the era of Jedi. This is the time of the Jedi. And it would make sense that they would use their lightsabers in this kind of way. I do agree with you, though. I mean, it definitely has more impact in the original trilogy, that they kind of used it sparingly, or at least used it in a way that wasn't so formulaic as it kind of got to be in the prequels. If that speaks to your point, I think you have to understand what this series is. Obi-Wan's trying to be covert. He's trying to be kind of low key. I know he kind of busts his saber out in A New Hope, but again, that's kind of when he's making his presence known at that point. But before then, I mean, he's really kind of trying to like not, bring attention to himself or Luke. So I think it would be appropriate that he not use his saber all the time. That it would be kind of an event. I think that's what you're speaking to, kind of an event in the show. When he like uses his lightsaber, it's like, well, that's a kind of a big deal. So I think not only do I think it's appropriate, I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think that the only thing I'm kind of concerned about this Kenobi series. Now, first of all, Deborah Chow is the showrunner, I guess, for this new series. And for those of you not familiar with Deborah Chow, she did I think 2 or 3 episodes in The Mandalorian season 1, and every one of her episodes were so badass. I mean, she instantly won over the hearts of the fandom. She's incredible. But one thing that I am concerned about, though, I will say, is I'm concerned about this fight that Kathleen Kennedy keeps touting, the fight of the century or something between Obi-Wan and Vader. If you're familiar with canon, I mean, this fight really shouldn't be taking place in terms of the timeline. What do you think about that? Does that concern you, Dre, at all? Or? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. So it's like,
right.
Fight of the century. It's like, okay, the fight of the century is, I mean, isn't that A New Hope? Isn't that when these kind of these forces haven't collided since what is it? Mustafar. So it's like, what? I don't know. That's weird. That's a strange thing. That's a weird thing to hype up.
And that's what they have to be careful with, because I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to compensate so much with the prequels that there was so much dialogue that by the time it got time at the very end, especially in The Phantom Menace, that at the end they were expecting this climactic battle between the Jedi and Darth Maul, and it lasted what, I don't even know the screen time of that battle. It was kind of pathetic.
Right.
And it was, well, you have to also think too, George Lucas started writing The Phantom Menace alone when Return of the Jedi was ending. That's how long it took for him to write that. And I'm just being sarcastic there. That's how long it feels like he wrote it. But I think as far as with the Kenobi series, that they do have to be careful because I think that they're trying to, put more action, put more thrill into it, and then have less dialogue. But you have to really be able to tie it in with the other ones.
Right.
And I think it's just one of those things where you just have to be careful.
You have to be careful, and I trust Deborah Chow quite a bit. Based on those few episodes she did with the Mandalorian season 1, I think she's incredibly talented, and she clearly understands Star Wars. So I trust her. I'm cautiously optimistic that it will be handled in the right way. I don't know though. I'm still worried about it. We'll see. Maybe it'll be a flashback though. Maybe it won't be.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thing. I mean, well, I think. The way I would integrate, and we already know Hayden Christensen's going to be part of the cast. The way I would have integrated is that Hayden Christensen's presence or Darth Vader's presence within Obi-Wan be more kind of inner or more kind of almost spiritual, like he's kind of battling in himself. And that is, it presents itself existentially, but it's actually an internal threat. So, that's the way I would kind of do it. And if we're going along that line, oh, sure, yeah, you could do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's more like you touched upon, Dre, where it's like more like in his head, which would be very interesting. Very interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And he would definitely have thoughts of like, because that was his brother. That was his. I mean, they really did love each other, and that kind of internal conflict, I think, would be really, really fascinating. So
and it's also interesting in all the press releases, and I might be reading too far into this, but on all the press releases, you see it when they announce Hayden. They announced Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, which is interesting to me because they're not saying he's Anakin Skywalker, at least nothing that I've seen officially. It's always as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they're going to kind of do the same approach that Filoni did with, I believe it was on Rebels, where I think it was Rebels. Yeah, I think it was Rebels where Ahsoka was fighting Vader and then half of his mask was like ripped off. That was Rebels, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do something like that where he's Vader, but like you can see part of his face or something. Because that would be kind of a waste to bring Hayden back, and then he's in a like a Vader costume. You can't even see him,
So I could see, if we were going along the lines of what I had earlier proposed, which is an internal conflict, I could see that kind of his kind of image or facade that Obi-Wan kind of has in his head be of a Darth Vader as Hayden Christensen than him in a suit, because he doesn't know that he's in the suit.
Right.
He doesn't understand that, that whole kind of thing. So his last memory would be of kind of the Hayden that he kind of knew before, right?
Right.
And they say Darth Vader because Darth Vader, I mean, literally Anakin died and Darth Vader killed him. That's kind of the lore, and that's why they treat them as two separate characters. And I think that's reflective in that casting sheet.
Interesting. Any Disney Family Man 23, any final opinions or comments on this Kenobi series, and anything about like Ewan McGregor's comments or anything like that?
I actually have to agree with Dre. I think if they were to go through that approach of like an internal conflict between Kenobi and Vader, that I really think that if they were to show the depiction of Vader through Kenobi's point of view, so the last that he saw Anakin, he saw Anakin, but he saw the darkness coming within him. So it was almost like that connection, but disconnection. So if they were to go down that route, I think that would be the smartest thing to do, as far as if they were to title Hayden as Darth Vader.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with both of you. That would absolutely be the right way to go, and I hope that's what they do. I really, really do.
I hope so too. I mean, a personal redemption story of Obi-Wan Kenobi, like this kind of personal loss, regret of maybe his, failings, foibles, and him trying to overcome that throughout the series, I think will be great.
And I think that this was a series in the making that needed to be done, because in the prequels, it's almost like that Hugh McGregor kind of got cheated out of his role, because in the originals, it just made such an impact of the character to then, help Luke on his path to becoming a Jedi, and it's almost like his character kind of went backwards and became a little stale. So it's nice to see that they're starting to kind of beef up the character profile.
I think so.
Absolutely.